Welcome.
You know, sometimes I try to be serious, and I don't know why you like making a joke. It's not a joke.
It's not?
No, it's our intro.
Oh,
it's serious.
Do it again.
No.
Do it one more time. Welcome.
What's up, guys?
What's up, guys?
We're back. Yeah, so we have another one. Already. I know.
We're pumping them out.
I'm proud of us too, guys.
Pumping iron.
Proud of us. We had this one a little while ago, but we needed a little bit more info. I actually know this case.
Yeah.
I listened to it on Morbid podcast, so probably will be chirping in, saying maybe my own a little bit, but he's got this one this week. But before we get into it, the usual, like our stuff, Spotify, Facebook, YouTube, go watch, go do it. Our Instagram, yeah.
Go follow.
Just go do it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So today is quite the story we're going to be telling you guys. I'm covering the case of Lizzie Borden. Was she
going back in time
a savage axe murderer or not? Today we'll find out.
Yes, she was.
Or, well, actually, we won't actually find out today, but...
We're never going to find out.
No.
No, never.
Never. So we covered our announcements. Make sure you guys... We haven't gotten any emails yet, unfortunately. So, make sure you guys are trying to, do that so I don't feel like a loser.
Don't, try and do it. Just do it. You know?
So, in the intro, there was a nursery rhyme that played. And it is, Lizzie Borden took an axe and gave her mother 40 whacks. When she had seen what she had done, she gave her father 41.
Yeah, I heard that when she originally heard that, she did not like it. She was not happy. They had made that, I think, before she passed, and...
Yeah, probably, yeah. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. She don't like it.
So, let's get right into it, shall we?
Let's do it.
Let's go back in time. Lizzie Andrew Borden was born July 19th, 1860 in Fall River, Massachusetts. Her parents were Sarah Anthony Borden and Andrew Jackson Borden. Andrew, while growing up, struggled financially, even though he was a descendant of a wealthy English-Welsh family.
Say that 5 times fast.
Eventually, he created a business that manufactured caskets and furniture. After that, he became a property developer and was actually pretty badass at it. That's where he made most of his money. A director of mills and owned quite a few commercial properties.
Oh, wow. You're doing the thing.
Yep. So the estate at the time, the house he had bought, and the girls that grew up in, was valued at around $300,000. But in today's age, that's $9 million.
You got that money, honey.
He's rich. So even though the family was wealthy, Jackson refused to put in proper plumbing in the home.
Andrew. We're calling him Jackson.
No.
Yeah, Andrew, the dad.
Yes.
Yes.
I don't know why I wrote Jackson.
Okay, Andrew.
Andrew refused to put proper plumbing in the home. So no running water, no flushing toilets.
And that's when
just
it was
out there.
Yeah, and that's when it was coming of age too. Everybody was getting it, and he could afford it, and he chose not to do so.
Yes. This caused major tension in the family because Andrew, or Mr. Jackson, was just being very cheap.
Which he also didn't like that word.
Yeah, he didn't. He was cheap though.
He was cheap. Better word that Morbid used. Frugal.
He was frugal.
That's a fun word.
Yeah, but they were saying, okay, so Morbid wasn't calling him cheap because they were sitting in the house while they did their episode. Which we could be doing, but...
I think I want to visit it, but I'm not staying overnight. I think to see it, because they haven't changed the house. It's still the same. It's still all the same today. Sorry, I'm
That's my end announcement, lady.
I'm sorry. What's that called? It's not metagaming. Forecasting? I just know.
Forecast.
I know what he's
Today
gonna
is
say.
rainy with a
side
dreary
of
dread.
axe murder.
The family's cousins had lived on a location called The Hill in their small town of Fall River, Massachusetts. So they would visit, and the homes up on the hill are extremely nice. Everything is, they have proper plumbing, they can brush their teeth with running water, flush a toilet, flush a stinky poo down the tube.
And also electricity was something that they lacked, that everybody else was getting.
Yes.
Yeah.
They would visit these homes and realize how much they actually want this rich lifestyle. And it annoyed the absolute piss out of them because they are rich, but their dad just didn't act like they were.
He was so cheap that when he worked in the funeral home with caskets, I don't know if you heard that part, he would chop off people's legs or their feet.
I did hear that.
To make their casket smaller to be cheaper.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
So if I'm 6'2" and he only had a 5'9" casket
made,
he would chopperoonie my feetsies off.
Goodbye.
And shove me in the box and bury me.
Don't need them, I guess.
They don't need them. So, unfortunately, Lizzie's mother had passed away in the year of 1863, just 3 years after the birth of their youngest daughter, which is Lizzie. A few years after the death, Andrew actually got married to Abby Durfee Abby Durfee Gray. Based on research, there are two stigmas when it comes to Abby. One says that she's a really mean and savage stepmother. The other says that she was the opposite. She was a good stepmom to the girls, but it is stated that Lizzie would publicly down her stepmother pretty often. So we won't ever really know, unfortunately.
Yeah.
She thought that she had only married her father for his wealth. Lizzie had a weird stigma when it came to Abby because she initially they got along. You know, Abby came into her life when they were really young, and she stepped up and took that mother position that they didn't have, unfortunately. And so it is said initially they got along and everything went well, but after time and as Lizzie got older, she started to think that Abby was only married to her father for his wealth. So then tension started, brewing in the family over that. So the family actually had a maid. I couldn't think of the word. Her name was Bridget Sullivan. And get this kind of gives you an idea of what the girls kind of were like back then. They called her Maggie, which it said that Maggie was a previous maid that the family had before. But I also saw online that Maggie is a racial slur towards Irish maids during that time. So
not nice.
Either one, not taking the time to learn the new maid's name or calling her a racial slur.
Yikes.
Yikey. We're going to call her Bridget, because that's her name.
That was her name.
So Bridget was a live-in maid for the family and said that the girls rarely ate meals with their parents due to growing tensions over the years. So over the years, they're just really starting to distance themselves from each other. Arguments are constantly happening, and etc. I've said the girls a few times, and I haven't actually mentioned her yet, but Lizzie and her older sister, Emma Lenora Borden, were both raised in the home with a very religious background. Emma is a few years older than Lizzie at this time. So as I state the girls, I'm talking about Lizzie and Emma. They're the sisters that were raised in the home. As young girls, they attended many church activities. Lizzie at one point was even a Sunday school teacher for recent immigrants to the United States for some time. Growing up, Lizzie was described as a sweet, caring, quiet girl. She did a decent amount of work in school and didn't cause really any issues. But there is one really odd habit that she had as a kid. She would actually steal from most of the local shops in town. And she was pretty popular for doing this, so her father caught whiff. And instead of the shop owners charging her for shoplifting, he would say, "Oh, just add it to my tab." And then he would go and cover what she stole from the stores. It was really weird. So
yeah, imagine just
Papa. Papa.
Thanks for saving my booty.
Yeah, Papa's doing some
just
coverage.
Kind of eggs her on to do it.
A little bit, yeah. Just kind of hey, if you want to go steal, go ahead and steal.
Yeah, I'm just gonna take care of it. I'll pay for it.
Because I don't pay for toilets.
Yeah, I would rather pay for you stealing than go pay for electricity and toilets.
Emma, while the girls were growing up, had basically took over the mother role for Lizzie. And that's when Abby and Lizzie really started splitting up because there was so much tension, under the roof of the home. So, speaking of tension, it really started growing when Andrew was beginning to gift properties to various family members of Abby. So, obviously, Emma and Lizzie did not agree with their father's decisions, and many arguments started occurring. So, essentially, they started to become very distant from the family and was like, okay, if you're going to give rental properties for free to her family, we definitely deserve something. So, their father actually gave them a rental property. And they quickly learned that renting property is a lot harder than it seemed. So it was really, I think, less than a year, and they gave it back to their father. Not gave it, he actually bought it off them for double the amount that it was actually worth. They're like, yeah, you know, we're big girls, we're going to take on this rental property, and then quickly realized that they were not cut out to handle stuff like that.
Well, it was more that the rental property, everything that goes into it money-wise, you pay for. Like, rent that he was paying for, whatever, however, like, there was so much money that was getting put into the rental home that it wasn't actually getting in their pockets. So they were like, this isn't really worth it.
Right. After that whole ordeal, tensions were still rising, and Lizzie literally got to the point of where she didn't even want to be seen in public with her own family. And even her relationship with Emma, her older sister, was like almost non-existent. So we're gonna fast forward to August 4th, 1892, which started off as a pretty average day.
Just a normal day.
The only thing that was going on was John Morse, which is the girl's uncle. He had stayed the night prior, so he's there in the morning with the family. And Emma's actually out of town at a friend's house. So everyone that's in the house is Bridget Sullivan, the maid, Abby, the stepmom, Andrew, the dad, John Morse, the uncle, and Lizzie, the daughter. So initially the day starts off as them feeling pretty sick. And the thought is that it was the soup because they had been eating it for around 4 to 5 days straight then. And even during cooking the soup, again, Bridget ended up throwing up quite a few times. So John ends up leaving the house at around 8:48 a.m. to go buy some oxen or oxeye. I don't know what the plural of ox is. Anyways, Andrew had left for his morning walk sometime after 9 a.m. So during the time that the girls stayed under the house, one of their chores was to clean the guest room if someone had stayed in it. And because Lizzie was the only girl there, Abby decided to go up and actually clean the room between 9 and 10 a.m. When Andrew arrived back from his walk, at first he couldn't open the door. It was jammed. It's weird. So he knocks, and Bridget hears the knock at the door and goes and attempts to open it, and
from the inside.
Yeah. So it's jammed from the inside and the outside. So she couldn't get the door open either. During the struggle of the door, Bridget actually states that she heard Lizzie from the top of the stairs laughing. A little weird, you know?
Maniacal.
A little bit. I mean, we all know that Lizzie is a person
of interest.
So it's just a little note. Excuse me. So once they actually got the door open, he went and took a nap on the couch, which is a common thing he did. But prior to that, he asked, "Where's Abby?" And Lizzie had stated that she got a letter from a friend saying that she is ill and she needs some help. So Abby...
He thinks that Abby's not there.
Essentially.
Yeah.
So Abby's not in the house to him, so he falls asleep on the couch. After some time, Bridget goes outside. She's doing some chores around, the yard and etc. And Lizzie comes bursting out of the house, screaming bloody murder, runs up to one of her neighbors and is saying, "Please help me. My dad has been brutally murdered. Please help, please help." So her and the neighbor run back to the house, and Bridget hears all the commotion, so she runs into the house. And what they see is Andrew lying on the couch, completely bludgeoned to death. He was hit multiple times in the face. Like, his face is essentially caved in. And he's laying all bloody dead on the couch.
Bloody dead.
So after being horrified by this scene, they're scrambling to try to find Abby, even though she was supposedly...
She's not there.
At her friend's house helping her. They find her in the guest room, also brutally murdered to death. Both victims had actually been struck by a hatchet-type weapon, and the damage to Abby was much more significant than it was to Andrew.
It's like it was personal.
So, according to forensic investigators, Abby had been facing her killer at the time of the murder, and the first strike hit her on the side of the head, causing a gash above her ear. So this ended up causing her to flip, and she fell face first onto the floor, creating contusions on her forehead and her nose. Her killer then struck her more than 19 times, 17 of which were to the back of her head. So if you can imagine a hatchet hitting something like that 17 times, what that scene would look like. There's nothing left. There's nothing left of Andrew's face, and there's nothing left of Abby's face. Andrew was slumped on the couch in the downstairs sitting room, and one of his eyeballs and eyelid had been cleanly split in two, suggesting that he had actually been sleeping at the time of the first strike, and he had 10 to 11 blows to his head. Regardless, 10 or 11 compared to 17, the damage is pretty significant. So with all this screaming going on and everyone's freaking out, neighbors started to form a crowd around the house, and the police had been called, obviously. They arrive and they are disgusted by this crime scene. Like this is like one of the worst crimes that had occurred in this time. It's just absolutely brutal. So they're just like mortified by this whole situation. So they immediately try to start to investigate, and the first assumptions were the murderers had to have been done by a man, and which is most likely a foreigner. For whatever reason, they assumed a foreigner. I don't really understand that. Police had assumed that it was some sort of outsider that had made entry into the house and brutally murdered Andrew and Abby. At first, they didn't suspect Lizzie. The reason why they didn't suspect her is because, according to Bridget and the neighbor, during this situation, Lizzie had 0 blood on her. And by the brutality of these crimes, whoever did this would have been covered in blood.
I mean,
you're smashing someone's skull. So, and she was known as like this sweet, innocent churchgoer. She works at Sunday school. She did good in school. She can't be a murderer. So they completely overlook her.
No way. And a woman? God.
So during this time of them trying to figure out what happened, they actually arrested a Portuguese immigrant, but it led to a dead end, and he ended up being innocent. Neighbors also claimed seeing a stranger near the home, but when questioned by police, he had a sealed alibi. So there's nothing placed him at the home. He was just outside the home, so he was innocent as well. Police were kind of running out of people at this point. So they actually started questioning Lizzie because of her attitude during this whole situation is just like, yeah, I mean, whatever. Yeah, my parents were murdered, but...
They were done murdered.
Her attitude threw them off, so they started questioning her. And initially, her story was... Her stories kept changing. Her initial story was that she was looking for a piece of iron when the attacks took place.
Strange.
Then, when she was questioned again, she was just hanging out in the barn, eating pears in the loft. So she was nowhere near the house. Yeah. I didn't murder my parents.
Completely different
story. But
story.
it's completely changing, and her attitude is just totally off. So they're like, she has something to do with it. But with 0 physical evidence against her, it would be really, really tough to trial her. But the police believe no one else could have done it. The only thing found with blood that belonged to Lizzie was her undergarments, but she stated it was due to her period, and they never questioned it.
I mean, can't question that. It's natural.
So backtracking a little bit, the police, with them initially thinking it was an outsider, it just didn't really make any sense because they had quite a few people in the home. The murderer definitely risked being seen by one of them leaving the house or doing chores or etc. So an outsider was kind of cut off at that point, especially when it comes to Abby facing her murderer. Normally, if you're facing someone, say if I was an outsider and I went into a house and I was going to murder someone that I didn't know, I wouldn't have them face me. Right. I would strike when they don't know what's going on.
Right.
So the fact that Abby turned around, that was like a big statement to the cops as well. So she was actually facing her killer. She was comfortable enough to get hit in the head with an axe initially. So the police were kind of against it being an outsider at this point. The other thing is the police started questioning the note that was apparently written by one of Abby's sick friends. But when asked where it was, Lizzie stated that Abby might have accidentally burned it in the fire, like threw it in the fire.
Lizzie burned it.
No.
On accident. Abby
Lizzie, yes. So when police questioned the letter, they
yeah.
questioned Lizzie about the letter because Bridget told them that she stated Abby was out of the house. So Bridget was a believer of Abby being out of the house as well.
Right.
Lizzie had stated, I think she burned it.
Oh, okay.
I think she might have actually, accidentally burned it. Yeah.
Don't need it.
So investigators actually found out that Lizzie had bought hydrocyanic.
I think it's hydrocyanic.
Hydrocyanic.
Yeah.
So investigators had actually also found out that Lizzie went down to the store and tried buying hydrocyanic acid, which is extremely poisonous. So she tried picking this up from the local drugstore, which is another red flag. But when she was questioned about it, she told investigators that it was actually to clean her furs. Apparently, Lizzie had seal furs to wear, and that was bought to clean them. So with no evidence, they couldn't arrest her at first. So a few days after Andrew's funeral, she was seen by someone burning one of her dresses, either in the front yard or in the fireplace. It's not really stated. But she was seen burning one of her dresses, and when questioned, she said it was stained by paint and couldn't be worn anymore. So this girl is like doing some very, very very out in the open sketchy stuff.
Very sus.
You're so sussy. So investigators actually started investigating the house. Obviously, there was a murder, so they had every right to. And they found a box of tools in the basement where they found a hatchet that had a broken handle, and this is famously known as the Handleless hatchet. They believe it was broken on purpose, so when it was left there, it wasn't suspected as a weapon for the murders because it wasn't usable.
Or to get rid of the evidence.
Or to get,
the fingerprints.
True. So that's another good point. They also noticed that there was ash around the blade, so they thought that Lizzie had taken the hatchet, because the police think it's her at this point, had taken the hatchet, rinsed it in water, and then put it in the fireplace to actually burn all of the evidence off, which caused ash and a little bit of rust on the hatchet. So we're going to fast forward a little bit. A couple days in the future, August 8th, she was brought into an inquest hearing, and her story had changed so many times and provided contradicting information about the murders that people swore at this, Lizzie murdered them. So by August 11th, she was actually arrested and put in jail for the murders. Quick little note, morphine was a very, very common prescribed medication back then, and the average dose of morphine around this time was actually 3 times more than the amount used today. And
Jinkies.
During every hearing, she was actually essentially this high on morphine.
Why?
Because she took it. It was a commonly used thing for anxiety and depression back then. And she had major anxiety when brought in to question, to be questioned. So every time she went to a hearing, she was on averagely about 3 times more than what we give out for morphine today, just for anxiety. So this girl was
messed up.
Yeah, she was not all there during these trials. 10 months later, so she's still in jail, but 10 months later, the trial begins June 5th, 1883 in New Bedford, Massachusetts. Another little note is on June 1st, there was actually another axe murder with very, very similar clues to this case that had occurred in Fall River and was heavily noted by the jurors during the trial.
I mean, obviously.
The trial had instant fame, mainly because no one believed that a woman could actually brutally murder people to this extent, which is kind of weird because there's actually other cases around this time where there are serial killer females. But regardless, instant fame. Boom. Right up there. The trial was basically a big show. People were gossiping over it, creating rumors. They were absolutely obsessed over the case and Lizzie. People were crowded outside the court and were physically waiting to see her walk into the trial every day.
sure she loved that.
They were interested in what she was wearing. Like, oh, what is she going to wear today? They were interested in what the jurors are going to say, what the trial was, what was being said during the day. But they would wait outside all day just to hear any details about what was going on in the courtroom.
I'm pretty sure that her lawyer was making her dress up like super fancy, all black, like.
Yep. So right
very
here.
Very pretty.
Yep, right here it says she had worn makeup in full black every day to the trial and carried a fan to cover her face at times. So the hatchet was a very prominent piece in the investigation, obviously. It is said that the handle was removed because it was covered in blood. One officer testified that they did not find the handle, but another officer argued against it. So even during this trial, officers are essentially not getting their story straight. So no one's story is straight at this point. Not even police officers during the trial.
It's crazy.
It don't make no sense.
There was also no bloody clothing found anywhere at the scene other than Abby and Andrew's. And it is said that people thought Lizzie had murdered her parents while naked. So all she had to clean up was her hands and her face because she would put her dress on before running out of the house saying, oh my God. I mean, so people think that she committed the murders while butt naked to avoid any blood splatter.
It's not a dumb idea. Not a dumb thought, you know?
Nope. And when questioned about the dress being burned during the case, actually Emma stepped up and testified, standing up for her sister, stating that it was her dress being burned and she told Lizzie to burn because of pain. During the trial, the skulls of her parents were actually brought into the courtroom to show the amount of damage done.
I don't remember that. That's nuts.
Yeah. Can you, like, that is not a thing today at all. They might show pictures of the crime scene,
I feel
but
like
the physical skulls of her parents were brought in.
Like, did they take their no skin skulls?
Just straight up skulls. No flesh, no skin, nothing.
Yikey.
But still, just to see a skull, knowing it's your mom or your stepmom and your dad's skull on the table and it's just caved in, it's cracked. Like there's photos. Like they're gonna see the photos.
Holy cow!
It's sitting there on the table. It literally made her pass out during the trial.
I mean, understandably so.
They used them to compare the damage and cuts to the hatchet found at the home, which it matched. The judge also had medical examiners determine that women are physically capable of committing murders this brutal. The trial was actually sort of a short one for the severeness of these crimes. It only took 3 weeks and an hour and a half for the jury to come out with a decision. During the entire trial, Lizzie never testified and only had one statement. I'm an innocent woman and I will let my counsel speak for me. Only thing she said during the entire trial.
Wow.
She didn't stand up for herself. Nothing. That's the only statement she had. The final day of the trial, the courthouse was actually absolutely slam packed with viewers. And after the jury actually came out with their decision, the foreman of the courthouse would actually give normally like a spiel and, you know, this and that. The state covers you this way, blah blah blah. But he literally just goes, not guilty. He gets it and he goes, not guilty. And the courthouse like erupted. Everyone's like, oh my God. And she was acquitted of all charges. So she was essentially the only person that they could probably find guilty in this entire case. And she was acquitted of all charges. And she was essentially a famous person over it now. So after the case, Lizzie and Emma inherited around $350,000, which is actually $10 million in today's age. And they go and they build a giant house on the hill in Fall River. A little weird.
What, to use your money for building
a house that your parents die and then you take the money and go build your dream Barbie house on the hill.
Literally. And especially because they grew up on the hill, but pretty much hang out with their friends.
Yeah, they always wanted to be on the hill,
and here we are.
She actually lived in that house for the rest of her life. The house was named Maplecroft, and the public was sometimes unkind towards Lizzie because not everyone thought she was innocent. The church she used to attend banned her from attending, and over time, Emma and Lizzie's relationship, because they lived together, dwindled, and Emma moved away, and they never really spoke ever again. Lizzie remained in the house alone for the rest of her life. She never got married, but she had an extreme love for animals. and quite the number of dogs accompanying her. She passed away in 1927 due to pneumonia. 7 days later, her sister actually passed away due to kidney failure.
Ouch.
They are both buried next to their parents in Fall River, Massachusetts.
And, fun fact, Lizzie actually changed her name when she moved into her new house to Lizbeth.
Yep.
Because, obviously, of everything that happened, she was trying to change basically her identity, but everybody knew where she lived. I mean, she didn't move very far away from her home. And that name is actually on her tombstone.
Yes.
Not Lizzie.
Yep. So, most people believe that if Lizzie had murdered her parents, it wasn't over money, it was over something traumatizing, which is kind of my belief. If she did murder them, I don't know. I don't know if she did. Let me read this, then we can go over a couple other things. Emma stated that there was actually things that happened during their childhood that she wouldn't talk about. The rumors were that Andrew made the girls do some gruesome things, and there may have been some incest situations occurring. So that obviously can be pretty traumatizing.
Yikey.
And that can maybe cause someone enough mental damage to...
Moida.
Bludgeon your face in with an axe.
Murder.
One point is the fact that Andrew's eyes were the main part of his face, and that they were completely hacked up.
I mean, the whole point of their head getting smashed in is just like... That in its own is so gruesome and personal.
You're right. That's a very personal target. I mean, to murder someone's personal in general,
but if it's just like just anyone, I'm sure you're not going straight just for the head, and that was the main point of contact.
Yeah, and Andrew's main point of contact were his eyes, almost like he had seen some shit that he wasn't supposed to be seeing.
He's seen that stuff.
So... Were the family members tied into this case? Ironically, Emma's out of town. John Morse is in town, and he actually ended up being a suspect at one point because he's a known butcher. He's actually a known butcher.
I mean...
Granted, he didn't do clean... If it was him, he didn't do very clean butcher work on Andrew's face and
I'm sure he wouldn't have just
Abby's
went for the head.
But... he was also a suspect at one point. So a lot of people think that the entire family was in on this.
Well, I mean, you just come into town and they just so happen to die. So, I mean, it makes sense that he's a suspect.
And ironically, he actually stayed in the room that Abby was murdered in the night after, which is mind-boggling because nowadays you kill someone, that is a crime scene for like weeks or months.
Long time.
But they let John go back. Like, they stayed in the house that night.
I don't like it. No, couldn't be me.
Where am I? They also question Bridget Sullivan as well because there's no blood splatter anywhere on any clothing. I don't think there's even blood splatter on the walls. Like, it's just all in one area, basically, essentially from them bleeding. So there was thoughts of Bridget essentially helping Lizzie clean herself up and everything before all of this happened. So she wasn't a suspect. So many skeptics believe all of these different things. What you believe is obviously could be the same as us or different. Do you think she's guilty?
Absolutely. I 100% believe Lizzie did it.
I think, to be honest, I feel like the whole family is guilty.
They're obviously a part in it, especially her sister, because, I mean, they probably even talked about it. And they probably both wanted to do it, and maybe it just so happened that all of the timing was right, that she wasn't in town, and that Lizzie had the opportunity to do it, and Bridget just so happened to be outside at the time. It's all coincidental that I feel like it just adds up too perfectly.
Yeah, I feel like the timing of leaving the house and then...
Exactly.
Her ironically going up and cleaning the room.
Yeah, it was just all...
and then Andrew... just takes the answer of Abby not being there, but then Bridget doesn't know where Abby is, but she's only upstairs.
Right, and then he believes it. Yeah.
There's a lot going on. Now, if this happened nowadays, someone would have been tried.
Oh,
easily.
absolutely.
But, I mean, corruption of crime scene,
right?
With John going in
and,
there.
Yeah.
Like, it's just a crazy, crazy story. So, will we ever know if she murdered them? No, we won't ever know. We won't ever know who murdered them either because they never came to a conclusion. They only trialed Lizzie Borden.
That's crazy.
Fun fact is that you can actually go stay in the Borden estate, and you can stay overnight. It's a bread and breakfast. Bread and breakfast. It's a bed and breakfast, and it's actually designed and decorated to essentially look like the exact time period.
You just walk back into 1860.
Yeah, exactly.
Pretty much.
The same couch that he was murdered in is in the house.
Same exact one.
The same bed is in this. Everything's the same. Everything's the same, and even the people
same mattress.
Yeah, I don't know about that. That's from. Ew. So when you go and stay at the house, which I really want to go do, and I know my little sister Ari wants to go do, they like push you to lay down right where Abby was murdered. Lay down how Abby was murdered and fell onto her face after being bludgeoned, and we'll take a picture of you. It's fun. And then there's pictures of them hanging up on the wall. There's crime scene photos on the wall. Mm-hmm. So they take this case and like essentially they just
they have
love it.
Yeah, and they have tour guides there as well, and they do very in-depth.
Yeah, which I've heard the tours are actually really, really good.
Yeah, about the entire place, and then you can stay. And I have zero interest in sleeping in that building. I'll go see it, sure, yeah, and then I'm going home. There's no way.
Essentially, the house is haunted by a majority of the spirits that were involved in the case. People say that they've seen Lizzie and heard Lizzie. They've seen Andrew. They've seen John. They've seen everyone involved in the case kind of around that house. And I haven't really looked into the stories, like the ghost stories, as much as I should have. But I don't know if it's like demonic type stuff or people being touched or whatever. But I am definitely interested in going and staying there. Amelia probably will not, but I'm
As
interested.
I literally just said, I'm not staying. Yeah. So.
Are you staying there?
I'm not staying there. If you go listen to Morbid's podcasts, they are there.
Yeah.
While recording.
Yeah.
And it's nuts because they stop a lot because they hear things, they see things, and they pretty much, one of them, I think it was Elena, but it doesn't matter, said that Andrew was the most prominent spirit there.
So shout out to Morbid, episode 96, part 1. There's 2 parts. It's a very good podcast, and it's crazy that they're in the house while it's happening.
Good for you guys.
Thank you.
Couldn't be me.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Hopefully this episode was good. This is like our 3rd time trying to record this because...
So much.
And yeah.
Research and other things.
So what do you guys think? Let us know in the comments. Was she guilty? Was she innocent? Would you stay in the house for a night? Let us know in the comment section below. Yay.
What do you think? She did it.
I said I think the whole family did it.
Yeah.
But yeah, what do you think?
What do you think?
Yeah, sorry. What do you think?
Not him.
Not me. What do you think? So make sure you guys remember our initial announcements. Follow our social media. Send us emails. Send us messages.
Send it.
Let us know what cases you want to cover. And until next time, we outie.
Bye. What?
Spooky.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.